Jackson in the key. Kick out. Davenport.
A steal for Kentucky. Ahead to Reeves. Left wing three. Got it. Jackson weaves.
A dunk. Bounces off to Adu and he slams it home.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Student Section. Today we have once again another, I guess, monthly update of the power rankings for SEC men's basketball. It is the 2025 year. It is currently, I'm recording this February 6th. So it's coming out on the 7th, but just record it for the 6th, just so you guys know, just in case anything changes from today and tomorrow. That is where this list is taking place. Before we get into this video, I do just want to say we're going to get straight into, well, I guess it's technically part of the video, but before we get into the power rankings, we are going to do the top 5, which is the top 5 plays of the week, shortened down to just the top 5. Here we go. All right, coming in at the number 5 spot, the first clip of the day we have is Chad Baker-Mazara with the James Harden-esque step back. Crowd goes wild. You can't hear it, but you can definitely see it. A lot of people call this a travel. I wouldn't. But if this is the number 5 clip, that should show you how well that this is all going to be. Coming in at number 4, we have Wade Taylor with a very similar type play. Very similar, step back. The only reason this ranks higher is because he does get that contact. And I would call that a foul because they've been calling it all year. So they got to call it here as well to give him that 4-point play. Coming in at number 3, we have Vanderbilt versus Oklahoma. You get to see Jalen Moore coming off the screen for the defense right there. He gets the chase down block after he's chased his man around the screen all around for that defensive play. That's just crazy athleticism. Hangs in the air with that super long wingspan, still gets the block. He did injure the dude unintentionally, obviously, but you can see it at the very, very end of this clip. If you look at Jalen Moore's feet, lands right on dude's ankle right there. Coming in at number 2, this is actually 2 clips in one highlight spot. We have a dude Thero with the double clutch dunk over, I guess, Caden Shedrick. No, it was Arthur Kaluma. Caden Shedrick, I think. Yeah, there we go. You see he avoids the contact with the pump to the side. And like I said, this is going to be 2 for 1. The next highlight is still in the second spot, but it's the highlight. You'll get to see it here in a second. He reaches back, dunks all over Arthur Kaluma. And I'm not picking on Arthur Kaluma. Arthur Kaluma is a dog. I really like what he's been doing this year. He just so happens to be on the other side of this clip. And then coming in at the number 1 spot, this is another 2 for. We have LSU. Damian Collins gets the block. After he jumped up for the first one, recovers, gets the block on Caden Shedrick right here. You see he goes for the first block, comes back, gets the rejection, meets him at the rim. Coming in, this is still the number 1 spot, but excuse me. It's still technically the same ranking as the very last LSU versus Texas clip, but like I said, same team, same game. They're both going to make it in the same spot. This is potential dunk of the year. This is a nasty dunk. Reaches back all the way, gets the full body contact, and hangs on him, puts his nuts on his back. Crazy. Shout out to Jai Bailey. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed those clips this week. I know there was a couple of 2 plays in one, but just too many good plays this week to choose from. I don't remember if Auburn's in it. I only say that I'm not an Auburn hater for those of you who don't know. Auburn was in like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 of those top 5s in a row, like 6 weeks straight of just top 5 plays of the week, just over and over again. So it's kind of, I just don't know if they're in it or not this week. If I did, it's because I'm hating on them. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and get straight into the power rankings now that we have the top 5 out of the way. Starting off with number 16, I'm gonna start from the very bottom and work my way up. Number 16, we have LSU. The reasoning for that being, I understand LSU has at least 1 conference win. They're 1-8, where South Carolina is 0-9. Overall, they're 12-10, whereas South Carolina is 10-12. You guys can probably assume where I'm going with this next, with the number 15th seed. But looking at LSU, their strength of schedule is only a 6.5, whereas South Carolina has an 8.3. And just for me, it's also the eye test. Also, if I look at net rating, South Carolina is quite a bit lower than LSU. Somehow, no, that can't be right. Okay, something's messed up there. Yes. So South Carolina versus LSU. I'm gonna go ahead and say South Carolina is the 15th seed. But I'm basically stating my case why I have South Carolina over LSU, considering South Carolina doesn't even have a conference win yet, and they might not get one the entire season. But the main difference is, first off, I have more stats over here. Okay, so South Carolina and LSU have a very similar win margin. Well, not really, but I've already talked about South Carolina has had a harder strength of schedule. South Carolina and LSU both have pretty bad offenses. The only difference is LSU also has a bad defense, while South Carolina has like a middle of the pack defense. So it's like bad offense and bad defense versus bad offense and decent defense. Another thing is, I know their offensive rating is really bad for South Carolina, but whenever I'm watching the games with this eye test I was just talking about, I can see the vision. The offense runs very well. Colin Murray-Boyles has looked really amazing this year. Standout, he's one of the best players in the league, in my opinion. He's looked really well. The thing is, for South Carolina, their shots just aren't falling. They're getting open shots. Their offense looks fluid. The shots just aren't following. They're not really able to put as much rim pressure as you would like them to. But LSU is shooting worse technically from the three-point line. Not even technically, they literally are shooting worse. South Carolina is only shooting 33% as a team. LSU is at 30.9% as a team. We'll round up and give them 31%. So, I mean, both teams aren't necessarily the greatest shooters. You look at overall field goal percentage, South Carolina is towards the bottom of the league versus LSU, where LSU is shooting 46%, South Carolina is at 43%. But like I mentioned, strength of schedule is going to come into play here, whereas South Carolina has had a harder strength of schedule than LSU's had by quite a bit, actually. Not really close there. What are some other stats I had pulled up earlier? Let me see if I can find them. Effective field goal percentage, South Carolina is once again shooting lower percentages there. But obviously, I've already talked about the defense, the defensive numbers. Right now, South Carolina isn't as good at rebounding, and they are not as good as offensive rebounding either. The assist numbers aren't going to be very high because, once again, the shots aren't falling, but they do get more assists per game than LSU. LSU really reminds me of it just feels like a pickup team. Like, they have talented players. I like what they have with Cam Carter, Jordan Sears, all those guys. They have a talented team. It just feels like a pickup game. Like, there's not much really, it doesn't feel like there's much like chemistry. It's really weird. Like, I don't think they hate each other on the court or anything. There's just a lack of chemistry there. It's just really not much going on with that team. The defense is all right. They look kind of just sporadic here and there. Like, they get good stops here, but then they'll also give up I'm talking about LSU right now. Then they'll also just give up a ton of just easy layups at the rim. Their only win being Arkansas this year, which I'm not very proud of, but they have a blowout loss to Missouri. They have a blowout loss to Mississippi, just Ole Miss. They have a blowout loss here to A&M. They have a kind of close game to Alabama. They have a blowout loss to Auburn, which these are all good teams. They lost to Texas by 30. They just lost to Georgia by 20. And this is, once again, I'm talking about LSU still, and they lost to Vanderbilt by 8. Like I said, you're getting good numbers out of Cam Carter. Jai Bailey's looked pretty good. Victorious Miller. All these players have looked good. Corey Chest is just not really. It's not meshing. Like, they're not playing as a team. Like I said, it just feels like I'm watching a pickup game at LA Fitness or something. Moving on to South Carolina, they've had a lot more closer games. Like I said, LSU's they've had one win in conference play, and the rest of their games haven't really been close. Yes, South Carolina got absolutely blown out by Mississippi State. They lost by 35 points. They lost by 20 points to Alabama, which those are both good teams, and then they ended up losing by 20 to Oklahoma. Those are really their only big losses. You could say Georgia was a big loss by 11, but then they go out. They only lose to Auburn, which is the best team in the entire country, by 3 points. They only lose to Vanderbilt, which is another really good team, by 3 points. They only lose to Florida, which is the second best team. I just spoiled something. Hold on. Forget I just said that. Florida's another really good team. They only lost to them by 1 point. They only lost to Mississippi State by 5 points. They only lost to Texas A&M by 5. Or that's only 4. So they're right there on the edge of getting these wins. They just haven't been able to get over that hump. It's weird. I feel like they should have won games at this point. I don't think they're going to win any more, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. They play Kentucky next, which Kentucky's been struggling. They play Mississippi next. Ole Miss, I don't think they're going to beat Ole Miss. I don't think they're going to beat Florida. I don't think they're... Oh, they could beat LSU. I think they will beat. That might be their first and only win of the league. They could beat Texas. They're not beating Missouri. They're not beating Arkansas. Oh, well, at that point, it's hard to tell with Arkansas. They've looked really good as of late, but the beginning of conference play, they didn't look good. So we'll see how Arkansas is by then. That's towards the end of the year anyways. They could beat Georgia. It's at Georgia's stadium, so they're not beating Georgia, and they're not beating Tennessee. So they could potentially pick up at 2 or 3 wins here and there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they do at the same time. I think I kind of covered both teams pretty fairly with that thing. I don't think there's really much else I want to say other than South Carolina just looks more fluid. They have more chemistry. The shot's just not going in. Moving on to the 14th seed, I have Oklahoma. They have fallen a few spots. I thought they were doing pretty good pre-conference play. Then they get into conference play and they have a pretty big skid. Signature wins. They blow out South Carolina, who I mentioned is like the worst team in the league, and then they blow out Vanderbilt. That is by far their best win, and definitely in conference play. I want to say maybe their best win in all of league play. Well, all of just normal games. They beat Michigan by 1 point. Michigan hasn't looked too great as of late. Oklahoma State's not very good this year. I would say Georgia Tech is a decent win as well. Not the best either, though. Stetson, Lindenwood. Okay, so I would say that Vanderbilt game is arguably, I'm not going to say definitively, but is arguably one of their better wins in the league. Like I mentioned, they beat Arkansas by only 3 points. I don't want to talk about the officiating of that game. Obviously, I'm an Arkansas fan, so I'm not even going to get into that. But close win to Arkansas, who at the time was the second worst team in the league. They lose to Alabama by 30. They lose to A&M by only 2. They lose to Gonzaga by 10. They lose to Texas. They lose to A&M once. A&M twice? Right, yeah. A&M twice. Both are fairly close games, and then they get blown out by Auburn, understandably. This team, I'm not a big fan of it. I really like Jalen Moore. I really like Jeremiah Fears. He hasn't been playing as good. He's still playing really good, just not as good as he was. Like in conference play, he's not playing as good as he was pre-conference. Duke Miles has been all right, but once after that, it's just kind of a fall off. Like you get decent production out of Kobe Elvis and Bryson Goodine, but other than that, like even then, it feels kind of empty production. This is another team that kind of feels like a pickup team. Like I don't feel much like of a identity. There's not much of an offensive like cohesion. It feels very my turn, your turn, especially with Jalen. Well, I actually do like the 2-man game between Jalen Moore and Jeremiah Fears, but other than that, I don't really like the overall offensive identity of this team. If I look up offensive numbers, offensive rating, they're towards the middle of the league, and then their defensive rating is also towards the middle of they have the second worst defense in the league. That puts their net rating towards the bottom. They have the second worst net rating, only behind South Carolina and only ahead of Arkansas and Mississippi State, which is kind of weird saying Mississippi State. But this net rating isn't organized properly. I don't know how it's per 100 possessions. It's not organized correctly. Whatever, that doesn't matter. But yeah, opponent points, so this is points allowed. They allow quite a bit of points. They're 4th in total points allowed. And like I said, rating is adjusted per 100 possessions. I'm on Sports Reference because I don't have Ken Palm. I don't want to pay for it. Maybe I will eventually, but we're not quite there yet, so I can't get in too much into advanced analytics. But once again, talking about Oklahoma, they are middle of the pack in points scored and offensive rating, which kind of just tie together anyways. Their pace is surprisingly high. They're towards the upper middle part of the league. They're 7th in the league. I would expect them to be a little bit lower. I don't feel like they play super fast. Strength of schedule, they're towards the bottom, so they've had one of the easier schedules in the league. What is this simple rating system that takes into account point differential? So it's a combination of point differential and strength of schedule. Once again, they're towards the bottom of this metric as well. I didn't even know what that was. They're towards the bottom of the league in blocks. They turn the ball over. Well, I guess they don't turn the ball over. And they get a decent amount of steals as well. I don't feel like they don't move the ball very well. Their assist numbers kind of reflect that as well. They're the worst rebounding team in the league, offensive and total rebounding wise. They get to the line quite a bit, and they're the number one free throw shooting percent wise team in the league at 80%, which is really high as a team. They get to the line a lot, but then you get to their actual shooting numbers. 3-point percentage, they're pretty high, it's just weird seeing these numbers because it doesn't translate. Their field goal percentage is third in the league. 3-point percentage is third in the league. Effective field goal percentage, once again, third in the league. I don't feel like converting over. They take the second least amount of shots out of the entire league. They're only shooting about 55 shots per game compared to South Carolina shooting 54. I guess that's why they're just not. They take a lot of time out of the shot clock. They get good looks, I would say, decent looks. But like I said, they take a lot of time out of the shot clock, which is why I'm surprised their pace is so high. I feel like they just chew the shot clock. They're not very aggressive on the defensive end, even though they're towards the middle of the league in total turnovers. Well, actually, they turn the ball over a lot too, which I guess would be another thing why they don't get a lot of shots up. But I think that's enough talking about Oklahoma. Moving on to the next team is Georgia. Georgia I had ranked up higher, but the main reason they're so low is their difference in home versus away stats. I think I can pull up Georgia's home and away stats. They are the second most amount of turnover heavy team in the league. This is once again another team. I really do not like their offense. I don't like their coach. What is it, Chris White or whatever his name is? Because whenever Arkansas played this team, whenever we played Georgia, we ran the same play. We ran a floppy action, like I would say at least 8 times in a row, and they didn't make any adjustments to it. I don't like that coaching staff over there. I'm not a big fan of that coach in general, but their team has been playing pretty good this year. Like in terms of expectations, they've definitely fallen back to reality in conference play. Asa Newell still leading the charge, still my opinion the best freshman in the league. You could argue, obviously, I can understand there's arguments for that. I'm not saying that your argument is wrong if you don't think he is. I could definitely see Trey Johnson getting that award. Jeremiah Fears is another guy that's definitely up there. I just like Asa Newell's impact on both ends of the floor and his ability to be more versatile. That's besides the point. Silas Dimmer is giving you decent production, but I mean, really, once you get past those two, the production falls off quite a bit. Dakota LaFue's been all right. Tyron Lawrence, Blue Kane, RJ Godfrey, these are all guys that have been decent. Santos Surreal isn't going to score, but he does a lot of other things well. If I can pull up their home versus away stats, I don't know if I can. I don't know if that's the thing I can pull up. But I will say, I know for a fact they're much worse on the road versus at home. If I can pull up their game logs, have they won any games on the road? No, versus Kentucky. They beat Kentucky at home, Oklahoma at home, South Carolina at home, LSU at home. Their losses, Ole Miss away, Tennessee away, Georgia at home. Auburn at home. Oh my gosh. Arkansas, at Arkansas, at Florida, and then at Alabama. So you can see the clear difference. They win a lot of the games at home, and they lose a lot of the games on the road. And their road losses they're really ugly to look at. Sure, they're I guess 3 of the top 4 teams in the league, and then you also add on the Mississippi loss, Ole Miss loss. There's really not much else to say other than what I just covered. They're not. If they were better on the road, they'd be a bit higher rank in my opinion. Moving on to the next team, which is the 12th seed, which is where I have Texas. Texas, another team that feels like a pickup team. It's so hard to explain. Shout out Trey Johnson leading the league in total points and points per game. That's kind of the only positive you can. They have other positives. I don't like the starting lineup. I don't like that construction. It doesn't help having Kendall Weaver injured right now. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. But it's 5 scorers. It's like 5 guys that can only score and not really impact the game any other way. I do think Caden Shedrick does obviously impact the game in other ways, but once you get past him, Trey Johnson is strictly a shooter. He's only at 2 assists per game, only 2 rebounds. Arthur Kaluma does rebound, but other than that, he just scores and rebounds. Only 2 assists from him. Jordan Pope, another guy who just goes out there and gets buckets. He's only at 1.7 assists as the point guard. Tremont Mark has been really not good this year compared to last year. Only 1 assist from him as well, only 3 rebounds. So really, you just have a bunch of scorers out there, and that's kind of all they do. They don't really I don't feel like they defend very well. I mean, they have a decent defense, but watching it play, I don't feel like they defend very well. Defensive rating towards the bottom of the league. Opponent points allowed is they're towards the top of the league in opponent points allowed, but I just watching it with my eyes, I don't see how that's possible. Strength of schedule for Texas, they have one of the easiest schedules in the league. That could help explain why. Their offensive rating is fairly high. Well, I guess it's really not. Offensive rating is pretty low. That kind of goes into what I was saying with there's not much fluidity with this team. It kind of just feels like it's a bunch of scorers that don't really know how to play with each other. I don't know if there's much else I want to say about this team. Do they have any like leaders and stats? I'm not seeing any other than Trey Johnson, like I mentioned already. Yeah, not much there from Texas. Caden Shedrick is tied for most games played in the league, but there's a lot of players in that list as well. Jordan Pope and Julian Larry are also there as well. Shout out Julian Larry. I didn't mention him, but he's had a pretty good season. Oh, no. I like his ability to come off the bench and be that playmaker that Jordan Pope isn't. That's what I wanted to say. I didn't mean he was a scorer. I mean, he's only at 5 points per game. But I do like he's leading the team in assists at only 3.8. That's all right, especially coming off the bench. I'll give him that for sure. But other than that, that is Texas. Moving on to the next team, which is Arkansas. So I feel like that's probably a surprise, and I want to explain just right off the bat. It's not because I'm an Arkansas fan. I wanted to put them. I really actually wanted to put them higher, but I really had to talk myself down. Excuse me. So right now, Arkansas, in terms of offensive rating, 14th in the league. Defensive rating, towards the middle of the league, but towards the top half of the middle. They're the, I guess, the 6th best defense in the league. In terms of opponent points, they're once again in that same realm, and then offense is towards the bottom in terms of total points put up. But their last 4 games, I do want to pull up the stat log real quick. They haven't had any necessarily blowout wins. They beat Kentucky by 10. They were leading by pretty much 20 the entire game. We just beat Texas by 8, but we were leading by about 20 the entire game. And then we got that little win over Georgia. And other than that, we've had a bunch of really bad losses. I'm 100% okay with saying that. Get blown out by Tennessee, get blown out by Missouri, lose to Florida, lose to Ole Miss, and then also LSU is definitely the worst loss there. And then barely losing to Oklahoma. I've already talked about that. I didn't like the officiating in that game, but I can't say that. So the last 4 games, which were the ones I was talking about, that whenever we beat Georgia, lost to Oklahoma, we beat Kentucky, and then we just beat Texas. Kentucky win was a very big one, but we have lost our second best scorer. I would say he's also our second best player. Boogie Flan, who's averaging 6 assists per game. He's leading the league in assist to turnover ratio. 15 points per game and almost 4 rebounds per game as well, which sounds amazing, especially coming out of a freshman. But the thing is, whenever he was on the floor, our offense got really stagnant because he takes a lot of shots. He takes a lot of time out of the shot clock, and he takes a lot of long twos that he really wasn't making. He wasn't doing very good in conference play. His numbers were a lot higher, like scoring-wise, before conference play. I think he was right around 16, maybe 17, I think. But since he's left, John L. Davis has went from the most hated man in the state of Arkansas to the most, like, the savior of this team as of right now. He's put up, like, in the past 3 or 4 games, he's had, like, 18, 16, and then 24. He's looked really good. He went from being, like, literally, like, the worst transfer portal pickup to really starting to look like what he was supposed to. His numbers are only at 10 points per game, but that's because he's only really had 4 games of looking like this. DJ Wagner's been amazing at running the point. I know Kentucky fans hate that, but he's at 3 assists per game, 10 points, 3 rebounds. He's a guy that goes into every game, you know what you're getting out of him. Once you curve your expectations, because a lot of people still expect him to be the number 1 prospect, average 10 points, but he's really steady. He goes out there, defends the best perimeter player. He goes out there, he puts rim pressure on the rim, which only really him and Adu Thero are the only 2 guys on this team who really put rim pressure on the, like, from the perimeter, like getting downhill. So he's been amazing. This whole team has leveled up. Carter Knox is finally looking good. Billy Richmond has been looking good all season. Adu Thero is still looking good. This team has looked really good if you watch their past 4 games, in my opinion. Those are the best 4 games out of our entire season, and coincidentally, they happen whenever Boogie Flan's gone. So we lose Boogie Flan, and now we play our 4 best games in a row. But with that being said, Arkansas comes in at that 11th spot. Coming in at number 10, we have Vanderbilt. Probably one of my biggest surprises of this year. I thought they'd be a lot worse, especially with the new coach, completely new team. But they've bought in. Super fun, super fast offensive team. I believe if we're looking at pace, they're towards the top. Yeah, third pace in the league. And that's because they play fast on both ends of the floor. They get out in passing lanes. They force turnovers. They run quick. I really like watching this team. I really do. They're super fast, super fun. But they definitely have a ceiling. We've seen that over their past few games. Who have they played? I think they beat Kentucky. I know that was one of their more recent games. Okay, point win margin. I mean, towards the middle of the league there. Offensively, points per game. Where is Vanderbilt's towards the top of the league in points per game, and defensively, they are also towards the middle bottom half of the league in points. They're not as bad as Kentucky, and they're not as bad as Alabama. Two really horrendous defenses. I'll talk about that here in a second. But Vanderbilt, they're just a really fun team to watch. They have slipped quite a bit in conference play, but this was the team I wanted to put under Arkansas, but it was kind of hard for me to do because a lot of their losses have come from really good teams. They don't have that LSU loss that we have. They lost really bad to Oklahoma. That's one that I would kind of put on the slate. They've lost to Florida, but they have that win over Kentucky. They have that win over Tennessee. They have a win over South Carolina, but they barely got out of that one. And then they beat LSU. So I could make a case, honestly, to put them below Arkansas. And I definitely would not argue if you did that. It's just hard for me because of the way Arkansas started off. But the way Arkansas is playing right now, they're definitely playing better than Vanderbilt. Moving on to the next team is Kentucky. They've really looked really bad without Lamont Butler, and it's hard for me to say that one player is the reason that they would look so bad. I don't buy that at all. I just think their system has kind of come to a standstill. I think the honeymoon phase is over with Mark Pope. People are starting to go back to calling him mid-major Pope. He has a good offensive scheme. It's just if it's not working, the offense isn't working. They don't really make many adjustments at all. Like whenever they lost to Arkansas, their only adjustment was give the ball to Amari Williams and just let him back them down. They weren't really able to make any adjustments on the road. Defensively and offensively, they don't make adjustments. They just run the same thing over and over again, hope it works. If it doesn't work the past 10 times, we're going to try it again. Maybe it'll work this time. Ortega always looked really good. Jackson Robinson has really stepped up in the absence of Lamont Butler. But this team is just they're clearly limited to what they can and cannot do. They've had some really bad losses, like I said, to Mississippi State, to Arkansas. They've lost to Vanderbilt. That's a pretty bad loss. They've lost to Alabama. That's another bad loss, especially with Alabama being a team in that same sort of ranking as them. You would want them to win that game. They lost to Georgia. That's also not a good loss. They obviously got blown out to Ohio State earlier in the year. I've been saying this too. Kentucky fans got really mad at me for saying that this team they have a ceiling, they have a cap. There's so much that they can do. If you play a team that's going to out-physical you, you're not winning. If you have a team that can completely expose your horrendous defense, you're not winning that game. Kentucky fans got mad at me. Kentucky fans were on a high horse in non-conference play. They were ecstatic. They were all in my comment section like trashing me for what I was saying. But look, guess who's right? It's an I told you so moment because they were very quick to say I told you so to Arkansas playing bad. I'm going to be very quick to say it too. This team has not looked good at all in their past. If they didn't win to Tennessee, they would be in a 5-game losing streak right now. That Tennessee game really saved them. If they would have lost to Tennessee, I would have put them below Arkansas and Vanderbilt right now. I could even make a case for Texas, but I'm not going to go that crazy yet. That's pretty much all I have to say about Kentucky. I think just everyone knows they have the third best offense, and then they have the second worst defense. They have the first worst defense in terms of rating. Really bad defense. Their net rating puts them down pretty low, actually, below a lot of teams. That's as much as I want to say about Kentucky. I think I kind of got all of my emotions out on that one. Next team is Mississippi State. Very solid team. Very solid team. They've looked a lot better. Pretty much, I can't really say much more than what I've already said in all of my videos. You normally have Chris Chan's is Mississippi State. Chris Beard is Ole Miss. Chris Chan's is, they usually run a more physical team that struggles. They have a very slow-paced, grinded-out offense. But this year, they've looked a lot better on the offensive end. Their offensive rating is 8th in the league, so they're towards the middle. They're right in the middle, really, in the top half of the middle, I guess you could say. Total points put up, they're also in that same sort of area, a little bit higher actually. But I just, there's not really much to say about this team. They're just super solid all around. I really like what they're getting out of, I can't remember his name right now. Hold on, let me pull it up. Yeah, Josh Hubbard, he's one of my favorite players in the league. I like short guys that can go out there and hoop. Only 5'10". He's shorter than me, believe it or not. Couple of 3 inches shorter than me, but he's a dog, bro. Averaging 17. I give him 18. I'll round up. I'll give him 18 points. 3 assists on all those points he's scoring. But beyond him, you don't really get any more scoring, really. I mean, Keyshawn Murphy, Claudel Harris, Riley Kugel, and RJ Melendez are giving you steady production, not the same type of production. But whenever you have a guy who scores as good as he does, it's hard to argue. Now, I will say, in conference play, they have been really bad. They have a lost to Auburn. Everyone's lost to Auburn. Tennessee's a good team as well. Missouri, they've had a really they lost pretty badly against Missouri. They lost to Alabama, kind of close game, and then they lost to Kentucky. They only have 4 wins in conference play, which is the same as Kentucky. They beat South Carolina barely. They beat Mississippi barely. But I mean, Ole Miss is a good win. I know it's an in-state rival. They beat Vanderbilt pretty good, and then they beat South Carolina pretty good. I will say I don't think I'm as high on this team as other people are. I do definitely see the flaws. I still see the lack of offensive production. Even though it's better than normal, there's still a limit to that. What was their defensive rating? Did I say that? Texas A&M. No, not Texas A&M. Ole Miss. No, Mississippi State. Oh my gosh, I'm all over the place. They have one of the worst defenses in the league, which is weird because normally they're one of the better ones. And then their offense is just middle of the pack as well. So there's not much standing out with this team, which is why they're not. That's why I'm not as high on them. But I can't put Kentucky over them. I can't put Vanderbilt, and I can't put Arkansas over them. With that being said, moving on to the next team, we have Missouri. No, we have Ole Miss. Sorry. 7th seed is Ole Miss. They've looked really good. They're like Mississippi State, but better at everything. Is that a fair assessment? If we look at Mississippi State offensive rating, they're towards the middle. Or no, Ole Miss are actually a little bit lower. But I like what you're getting out of Malik Dia. Their defensive rating is going to be a lot higher. No, their defensive rating is lower too. Let me look at total points. Maybe I'm just wrong. I guess I'm technically wrong in those aspects, but I think Ole Miss has had a better stretch in SEC play. Yeah, they only have 4 losses compared to Ole Miss's 4 wins. Or no, Mississippi State's 4 wins. Oh my gosh, I'm all over the place with the Mississippi State or the Mississippi teams. Ole Miss beat Kentucky, beat Texas, beat Alabama, beat LSU. Not a very good team, but it's a win. They beat Arkansas and they beat Georgia. Now they have losses to Mississippi State, like I mentioned already. They lost to Texas A&M by 1 point, lost to Missouri, and lost to Auburn. So some good wins, some good losses, some bad wins, and some bad losses. Sean Padula has looked amazing, kind of like the leader of this team. I like Malik Dia. I like Matthew Morrell. The starting 5 is really good with Jamin Bakefield and then Jalen Murray. I really like that starting 5. Dre Davis off the bench is giving you steady production, but after that, after your top 6 players, it's a big drop off in production. You're only getting 5 out of David Barnes, Michael Brown Jones, MBJ. That's a weird nickname. Only giving you 4, then it's 2, 1, 1. Not much production past your top 5. That's the biggest flaw I would say with this team. They're one of the top teams in turnover to forced turnover ratio. I guess turnover ratio is the right word to say. Forcing turnovers and not giving up turnovers is kind of what I want to say. They're bottom of the league. They have the least amount of turnovers in the entire conference. And other than that, that's kind of it. They're just a steady team. They run a good offense. Not much else to say about Ole Miss. Moving on to the next team is going to be Missouri. I already kind of spoiled that. Missouri's been super amazing. Super, super amazing. They go from being no wins in the conference to being one of the better teams in the conference compared to last year. Offensive rating for Missouri, they have the second best offense, which is higher than Kentucky. It's higher than Florida, higher than Alabama. And those are all teams that have had really good offenses. They've been better than Texas, better than Oklahoma. And then you look at their defensive rating for Missouri. Where are they? I guess that's kind of where they. No, yeah, okay, they're towards the middle of the league in defense. In total, in terms of offense, opponent points, I'm all over the place, bro. That's kind of where they slip, but they're still towards the middle. In terms of total points, they're still towards the top. I really like what this team has done. I really like what it's just super good, super big surprise. I think they're definitely everyone's surprise of the year. Who are some individual players that they're getting production out of? Let me see. Missouri. I mean, I know a few off the top of my head, but I want to make sure I have everything correct. Tamar Bates giving you 13, getting 12 out of Mark Mitchell. Caleb Grill's giving you 13. I've already said I think he's the best shooter in the league, either him or Kobe Brea. You're getting 9 out of Anthony Robinson, 8 out of Trent Pierce, 8 out of Tony Perkins, 7 out of Marquise Warwick, and then 4.5 out of Jacob Cruz. But you're getting good production out of, I mean, really, their top 8 or 9 guys. You're getting really good production out of all the way down to Aiden Shaw, I would say. That's kind of where I would cut it off. I thought Anor Boateng out of Little Rock. Shout out Little Rock. I thought he'd have a better season than what he is having right now, but he's a freshman. Pretty much they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 freshmen on their roster that are kind of just the worst players. But other than those freshmen, everyone else is doing really good, except for Jeremy Sanchez. I guess he's probably just a walk-on if I were to take a guess. Hasn't even touched the floor. Well, I guess he has touched the floor, but he hasn't done anything in those minutes. What did I want to say? Anything else I want to say about Missouri? No. Oh, yeah. Okay, Dennis Gates, shout out to what he's been able to do. That's kind of all I want to say. I want to give Dennis Gates a shout out. Coach of the year. Definitely coach of the year. Not even a debate in terms of SEC. I don't know about the whole league. I think he'd be in debate for the whole league as well, going from literally 0-16 in conference play to now being the 6th best team in the league. Moving on to Texas A&M. This is a team I kind of debated putting Missouri over just because the offensive production of Missouri. But I like what Texas A&M is doing better. They have a better conference record. They blow out Texas. They beat Oklahoma. They lose to Alabama, and then they lose to Kentucky. But they have a good win over LSU. They have a close win over Mississippi State. They beat Oklahoma, and they beat South Carolina. They lost by 1 point to Texas. And these are all games where they were missing their best player in Wade Taylor. But Zerk Phelps has really stepped up in that absence. I really like what you're getting out of Manny Obaseki. Henry Coleman's going to be that physical guy. Pharrell Payne. Not the best production out of Anderson Garcia or Solomon Washington, but these are still guys that are going to go out there and rebound very well. This is the best offensive rebounding team in the league and in the country. That's kind of expected with this roster construction. Florida's a close second, and so is Alabama. But Texas A&M, offensive rebounding, they're going to have a slow offense, especially with Wade. Well, actually, since Wade Taylor's been back, he's been hitting some really crazy shots. I don't know if he made the top 5. I don't remember what the highlights were because I did a voiceover, and I'm going to add the clips in afterwards. So I don't actually remember what the top 5 was. I don't remember if he made it. I know he was in contention. There was one crazy step back he had that was in contention. Strength of schedule, they've had one of the hardest schedules in the entire league, which is why they're up here higher. But anyways, that's Texas A&M. Moving on to Tennessee, they've had a skid as of late. I could see an argument for putting A&M over Tennessee. But all of their wins, they've had so many blowout wins. I'm looking at their game results or their game logs. They've blown out a lot of teams. They went undefeated in non-conference play. But then they have a blowout loss to Florida. They did come back and end up blowing out Florida, which is a weird turn of events. They held Florida's offense to only 44 points, whereas Florida only held them to 43 points. So it's a weird turnaround right there, I will say that. But they get the win over Texas. They get a really good win over Georgia. They get a tight loss to Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and then like I said, they've definitely slipped up a little bit here with the loss to Kentucky and the loss to Auburn. Which are teams that are kind of in that same realm that you'd want them to be able to compete with. With Tennessee, they still have the best defense in the league by far. It's not even really close. It's really not even close at all. Their offense has lagged. Their offense is definitely what's holding them back. They have the second worst offense in the league. Offensive rating wise, they're still towards the bottom in terms of offensive rating. They definitely missed Zakai Ziegler for that little stretch that they didn't have him. Chaz Lanier has been shooting the skin off the ball. But like I said, this team is so similar to last year, where so much of their offense production relies on Zakai Ziegler playmaking and Chaz Lanier / Don't Connect shot making and shot creating. Shout out Don't Connect. I know he just got traded. Hopefully he'll find a home with the Hornets, especially next to Brandon Miller. But that's besides the point. Really good defense, struggling offensively. That's the only reason they're not any higher. I could definitely see an argument for A&M being over them, but this is just my personal list. Moving on to Alabama. Once again, this is a really elite offensive team, very similar to Kentucky, and a really bad defensive team. But, they're a little bit better defensively than Kentucky. They're still down towards the bottom of the league, but their offensive rebounding numbers is really what's saving them. That's what makes their offense so good, is that they get open shots. They have good shot makers with guys like I got to go through their roster, bro. Their roster is so deep. But they have good shot makers. They've only lost one game in conference play. They had a little bit of a slow start, at least for Alabama's expectations, with a loss to Purdue, and then they have the loss to Oregon. But since then, they've been playing absolutely out of their mind. I could definitely see an argument for them being the number 2 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if you put them there. Honestly, I might change them in my mind right now to put them at the number 2 seed. But we'll talk about the number 2 seed. I'm sure you guys can guess who it's going to be. But like I said, they're getting insane production out of Mark Sayers. He stepped up, looking like the player of the year once again. Aiden Holloway, LeBaron Filan, shout out to him. He's another guy in the freshman talks. Clifford Omoyori, he's one of their big offensive rebounders. Grant Nelson's another guy on those offensive boards. Both those guys are averaging 8 rebounds, 6 rebounds. You're getting 6 out of Mohamed Diabate. Chris Youngblood was injured, but he's starting to get his footing underneath of him. Aiden Sherrill hasn't looked very good. Houston Mallett, I don't know what happened to him. I was really high on him coming into this year. But overall, they just have so many weapons. Latrell Wright still hasn't looked very good either. But, he's not getting much touches either. Anyways, what I was talking about with their offense. They get a lot of good shots. They have a lot of good shot makers. And if they happen to miss, they're going to get the offensive rebound, and they're going to get another chance on making that shot. That's kind of all I want to say about Alabama. Moving on to Florida, they've definitely had a skid here as of late, but their conference play was such a strong start. Their pre-conference play was such a strong start that the skid can be ignored, kind of. I still could definitely see an argument for Alabama being over them, but if I look at their recent game log, they've only had 3 losses in conference play. One of them was a 1-point loss to Missouri, who's been on a burner. Like I said, lost to Tennessee by 20 points, and then they ended up losing to Kentucky by 6 points. That was the first game of the year. I remember that. But then they go and blow out Tennessee. They blow out Arkansas. They blow out Texas. They blow out Georgia. And they blow out Vanderbilt. They have such a high-octane offense. I know their offensive numbers have slipped as of late, but Walter Clayton and Elijah Martin, best backcourt in the entire league. I'm not going to argue. That's one of those things where I'm saying that's a definitive fact. I could see an argument for maybe, who else would be, Chad Baker-Mazara and Tahad Pettiford. Is that another argument? Maybe Miles Kelly with that combination of those 3 guys. But Will Richards, another guy, another guard giving you crazy production, 13 points. But and then their big men, you get Alex Condon, Thomas Haw, Ruben Chinyelu, Sam Alexis. They get a lot of big man production. That's why they're one of the best rebounding teams and best offensive rebounding teams. Like I said, offense has slipped, but their defense has also kind of slipped, but they're still the second best defense. Still the second best in terms of opponent points as well. Not much else to say about this team. Like I said, there's definitely an argument for Alabama, but and the number one's Auburn. Not even really going to talk about them, which kind of sucks because of how good they are. The one thing I will say is every game they play, it looks like they're just out there messing around, goofing around, just toying with the other team. It looks like an all-star game. Like they're just doing crazy, just fast break. I'm going to turn around and just lob it off the backboard. I'm going to do some stupid stuff. I'm going to take a half-court shot for no reason. But they still beat teams by 20, by 30. One of the best offenses, one of the best defenses. They only have 1 loss on the year, and that was to Duke, who is one of the better teams in the league. I'm still not convinced with Duke, but they've had some really close games, especially without Janai Broome. But the fact that they can win without the player of the year, I'm talking like John Wooden Award type guy, says a lot. This team just continues to blow teams out. Let me see. They beat Mississippi. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Oklahoma. They beat Mississippi State. They beat Missouri. They beat Georgia. That was a close game. They beat Tennessee. Overall, just a really good team. I'm still waiting. I don't think they're going to go undefeated in conference play. I think that's a wild statement. But I think they're going to get a loss to a team you wouldn't expect. I could see Florida giving them a run for their money. But I think they could lose to a team like Vanderbilt. Will they play Vanderbilt at home? Not sure. I could see Florida beating them. They have 3 home games in a row. What the heck? 4 in a row? 5 in a row? Okay, that can't be right. That can't be right. No, that's not right. No, that's not right. That's not right. I could see him losing to a Florida. I could see them losing to Alabama. That's gonna be a really good game. I can't wait to watch that. That's definitely gonna be college game day type. I could see them losing to Vanderbilt, like a Mississippi type team. I don't think they're going to lose to Arkansas. I don't think they're going to lose to Georgia. I don't think they're going to lose to Kentucky. And they're not going to lose to A&M, and they're not going to... Well, they play Alabama twice. I could see Alabama beating them at least one out of those 2 games. That is everything I wanted to say. I cannot stand Ja'Kai Howard. He's the biggest diva in the entire college basketball. If you don't know why I say that, look up Ja'Kai Howard controversy. There's so many of them. It's like a rabbit hole. Shout out Miles Kelly. I've already talked about him. Tahad Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara. Shout out Janai Broom. Denver Jones has been amazing. Chaney Johnson's still my favorite player. And I'm going to give you guys a little gem. Dylan Cardwell is the best defensive player on this team. I don't want to hear anything about Janai Broom. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in the next one. In the comments, let me know if I'm wrong, if you disagree with me. Give me your opinion. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Peace out.